who's rooting for Tampa to win is going to hope that things are going to be a little bit different. But what you guys brought up about Kansas City's offensive line being really beat up against Tampa's defensive line, which seems to be playing as best they have all season, this is going to be the big telltale sign for me going into this game. There's a lot of other factors that could be going on, but Mahomes seems like one of those quarterbacks that is impervious to pressure, right? Mm-hmm. We all sit here and we talk about draft pass rushers, draft guys who can get to the quarterback, make them uncomfortable, get them on the ground, get in their face, blah, blah, blah. Mahomes, week after week, opponent after opponent, is proving to us that unless you physically bring him to the ground while he is holding the ball, pressure does not really phase him that much. He will still be able to make plays. And so is this going to be too much? Is the offensive tackles both being out for Kansas City? Is Vita Vea being back? Is Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul playing as good as they have all season? Is this finally going to be enough? Is this finally going to be too much pressure for Mahomes to where he can look human enough to where he can outscore him in the biggest game of the season? That's, a big matchup that I'm going to be circling in red, if you will.
So let me give you so I was in your position last year. I'm a Niners fan. And I'm walking into this game, and the big thing is like, okay, I need Nick Bosa to have the game of his life. We need to get Mahomes uncomfortable. We need to get him, we need to beat him up a little bit. And it was working. It was working. I'm sitting next to Eric in Miami. Feels like 500 years ago. Beautiful day.
I bet.
10-point lead. And it wasn't enough because as the game wears on, the pass rush slows down. It becomes more of a just, can your guy beat the other guy sort of matchup. So how big of a lead does Tampa need to have in this game for you to feel like they are going to win the Super Bowl?
Never. The number
There's nothing?
No, I don't. What about? Well, Deshaun Watson had what? 24-point lead, 21-point lead, whatever it was.
Texans,
and Bill so, O'Brien. Like, obviously, the situations are a little bit different. But that's the thing is that you watch what Kansas City was able to do against Tampa earlier in the regular season. You watch what they were able to do tonight against the Buffalo Bills, and it's like, okay, they're all of a sudden getting Tyreek Hill in a mismatch situation where he's in the slot, in between the numbers, and they throw him a quick little slant pass, and he takes 71 yards. Like, that's the Chiefs' offense. These are the guys that they have. And so I don't know if elite is ever safe. Of course, you've got to be able to play the strategy where you got to control things a little bit. Yes, scoring 7 points is important, but keeping him off the field also, I think, is certainly important. And then, the pressure aspect of it. It's got to be a 2-in-1 thing. The pass rush has to work with the pass coverage. And look, let's just say this. You got to get lucky against the Chiefs. They have to beat themselves. They have to get a little bit uncharacteristic, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to with the Buccaneers and with the Chiefs, because even in the games that the Buccaneers won a lot this year, the reason why I didn't think they were going to make the Super Bowl quite yet is because there were so many times this year where, they were winning, they were scoring a lot of points, but there were still so many things that I felt like they could have been doing better. Mm-hmm. This is a game that we're going to get in the Super Bowl between two teams that a lot of people would say their biggest opponent is themselves, like getting in the way of what they are capable of doing talent-wise, roster-wise, chemistry-wise, whatever it is. And so that's what I think makes this a really fun matchup is you've got two teams who can score at will, can do different things on defense at will. And so that's just going to make it fun. And when you go up against the Kansas City Chiefs, there's no doubt about it. Some luck has to be on your side. They have to be a little bit uncharacteristic because it's hard to think that Mahomes and that offense on any given day, no matter where it is going to be the second best team wherever they're lining up.
Are you going to you're not in Tampa anymore. You making a trip? You masking up and
I don't know, because the entire Bucs fan base might just like tie me up by ropes and throw me out of the state, because when I left Tampa, I want you guys to realize this. I left Tampa last January. I moved up to Charlotte, North Carolina. Since then, the Tampa Bay Lightning have won the Stanley Cup. The Tampa Bay Rays made it to the World Series, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now in the Super Bowl. So I am
like
the Tampa
now.
Curse. I'm the Tampa Curse. And so I think that a lot of people on Twitter also think that I'm the Tampa Curse. So if they see me in Tampa, even if I wanted to go, they might just straight up throw me outside the state. So I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure if I want to risk that.
You can always also just prepare copious amounts of barbecue.
Oh, this is good.
And eat at home,
Yeah.
That might be what we do.
I know. I'm trying to figure out because, I'm not obviously not going, but I went last year. It was a fun experience.
Never say never.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. But last year was a lot of fun. I think the difference this year, guys, I mean, last season, the entire week was Chiefs have the best player, Niners have the best team.
Mm-hmm.
I think this year, people are more woke to the idea that Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelsey, that defense of Kansas City.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah. All 7 total yards today. People, I mean, you kind of paused a little bit this morning when I said Kansas City's got a better defense than Buffalo. It makes everybody pause a little bit and be like, wait, Buffalo is supposedly this tough team that made the playoffs with defense a couple years. But, the scheme and everything. So I think people are going to go into this game and say – and give the Chiefs their due as far as the roster from 1 to 53, unlike they did last year. But then the difference that Tampa has is unlike last season with the Niners, Tampa has a quarterback that I'm not going to put in the same breath currently as Mahomes, but is in the top. I mean, is deserving of the respect I think an elite quarterback against Mahomes, would garner.
Prediction for you and how it happens.
Well, even if I think the Chiefs are going to win, there's no chance in hell I'm going to predict the Chiefs are going to win.
I wouldn't expect you to.
Okay, I'm just letting you guys know that. I think the final score is 37-31.
Nice. Taking the over.
Tampa wins the game because it probably in similar situation. Like they Chiefs will probably own the second quarter. Chiefs will probably make a big-time comeback. Like, Bucs will come out of the second half on fire, score a touchdown on the first drive, keep possession throughout the third quarter into the fourth quarter. Chiefs get their last 2 possessions of the fourth quarter, and they score on both of them, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, and they get it to within striking distance. And then, wow, I'll pay homage to the 2002 defense, and I'll say the defense actually steps up and keeps Mahomes out of the end zone to win the game.
I love it. Trey, thank you for taking some time with us.
Yeah, Trey, thanks for coming on. Congratulations to your favorite team.
Of course, y'all. I always appreciate when you guys have me on. Love talking ball, and thank you. It's going to be fun times in Tampa for a lot of people down there, so I'm excited for that.
We'll compare our sides on Super Bowl Sunday.
Please, yes. I know. I need a pick of whatever y'all are doing, whether you're there, whether you're at home, whatever you're doing. I need the sides.
We'll make it happen. Tampa Bay, Trey, always a pleasure. Be well, brother.
See y'all.
You brought up a great point there at the end, Eric, which was, I think this time the narrative will be, the Chiefs are the better team. They have the better player, the best player. But this time, the dog in the fight has a player that on any given day can be Herculean, which is Tom Brady.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Chiefs fans, and having watched this game 2 years ago, Tom Brady walk into Arrowhead and win a game as a 3.5-point underdog, D Ford being offsides, all that kind of stuff. I'm not sleeping on Brady here. That being said, I saw a flat 3 and I took it because I'm going, because I think it's going to get out a little bit. But no, this is a game. Last year scared me because the Chiefs defense, no stars really, and the Niners offense was scary good in the playoffs, right? Especially against the Packers. And, we had not seen the Chiefs defense really dominate a team the way that they kind of did today and they kind of did last week against Cleveland. So now we're going to be in a position where I think people are going to be less scared, right? I think Chiefs fans, having gone through this 50 years ago, right? Like, you're playing with house's money. They're gonna be a little. I think the narrative is gonna be a little bit more loose.
That have gone through this 50 years ago,
right? I mean, but you know what I'm saying. Like, anybody my age or younger, even though has only seen pain until last year.
Yeah.
I think that the narrative is gonna be looser this year.
It's interesting looking back at that game against the Chiefs and the Bucs, and we talked about both these games this week were rematches, and how there were things that you could take from those rematches and apply to these games, but also a lot of things that were kind of noise. And I don't know how much of what Tampa Bay did in that game is really something they're going to change, right? their defensive identity. I mean, they need to, because in the first half, Carlton Davis targeted 9 times, gave up 8 catches for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes threw for almost 400 yards in the first half of that game. And the Chiefs then kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit, still ended up winning the game 27-24. You would figure in the Super Bowl they will not take their foot off the gas pedal, should that be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this. So right now we're seeing 3.5. Right now, where I'm currently looking, it's Chiefs 3, but minus 120. Total of 57. Do you give any credence to Tampa Bay playing at home, knowing that the Chiefs will travel in as if it were a normal week during the regular season and not like the week before to get acclimated?
I don't know. I mean, I think so. Home field. How has home field gone this year? Packers lost, Chiefs won. I mean, we've seen increasingly more fans. Mm-hmm. I have to go see and look. There was the narrative about Tampa Bay climatizing themselves from California Florida to Wisconsin, and like that. I don't know how much that mattered, right? But the issue that you're going to have at the Super Bowl.
What did they do?
Well, so
I didn't hear about this.
So last week on one of our podcasts, I said I still would make home field advantage only 1 point, mm-hmm. even in Green Bay. And the reason I said this was, and I still liked Green Bay, by the way. I was wrong. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I'm not going to give it a full 2 points because for one, Brady has experience in the cold. The number of fans can be smaller. And, one of our friends, Rufus Peabody, produced this paper from like 1981 to 2004 that said, basically it's the temperature of the home environment for that previous week versus, so there's this like acclimation period when you fly mm-hmm. there. Tampa has this advantage for Kansas City where it's a better weather environment than what they deal with in Missouri. The fans, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the 27,000 fans, including the 7,500 fans that are vaccinated healthcare workers, thank you, by the way, mm-hmm. are not Tampa fans to a degree that it'll push the lever. So the home field aspect is what? Just travel? And I think travel has become not trivial, but less of a big, it's probably the reason you've seen home field advantage decline. And then referee bias and all that kind of stuff is the reason you still see it not gone, from a statistical standpoint.
No, I agree with you. I had kind of convinced myself that there was going to be some home field advantage. The Chiefs being in the Super Bowl kind of takes a lot of that away because they're like this impervious team, right? Where Mahomes gets choked out, gets a concussion, has turf toe, and we're going to bring Seren Petro on here in a few minutes, and I'm going to ask him if he has any inside information into what the ever-living hell they pumped into Patrick Mahomes to make his toe injury disappear, because it did not show up. It's just flat out.
Well,
it did not show up.
Well, we talked about this on the live show, by the way. Like, turf toe is an injury that, it's not getting any. But you remember they said, they're going to check him out for surgery after the season. Like, what has happened to his toe has happened to his toe.
Right, but it's one of the most painful injuries. Yeah. So the point is, they had to put some painkiller in there. But to put enough painkiller in there for him to look completely normal and yet not to be high to the point where he couldn't,
Well, I think Mahomes probably dealt with a certain amount of the pain himself. And we're talking about 2 quarterbacks. And I think Romo said it really well in the broadcast. I mean, this is like watching Michael Jordan, right? Yep. Versus LeBron. When did Jordan retire the last time? It was like 03, 04 when he was on the Wizards. Mm-hmm. And that was like the very beginning of LeBron's career.
04, I think it was 01, 02.
So they did separate. But this is like legitimately watching this kind of dynamic where, and the difference is Brady won Super Bowls early on, but he wasn't like Peyton Manning efficiency. He was like a caretaker at the beginning, more, caretaker plus, let's say. Mahomes has been like,
no, this is different in that this would have been like Jordan right after 98 joining another team.
Yes.
where he was still at the height of his powers, and joining a team that was good, like a team that was actually better than the Bulls were. And then, maybe, LeBron obviously excelled. He was like 14 at the time, but maybe like Kobe or something like that.
Yeah.
Kind of closer to the height of his prime, and them actually playing one another. I don't know.
It's weird they don't see
this.
Kobe that way, by the way, because Kobe won 3 championships. Now he had Shaq.
Yeah.
And then he won one by himself,
Yep.
ish. But yeah, I mean that's kind of a better comparison, right? But like we really never saw it to Tony's point on the broadcast. I call him Tony because we got a good vibe,
Let's talk a little bit about the Chiefs and Bills game. Were you surprised by the Bills / how bad the Bills were?
They weren't that good in the 2 playoff games. Like they were outgained by both teams. Allen was good in the Indy game, but he had the same he fumbled. They almost lost that game, right? And to the Chiefs, then Chiefs didn't capitalize on all of them. Thornhill dropped an interception. Ward dropped an interception when he did that drop coverage. Allen always had these games in him. He had this game in him against Tennessee on that one Tuesday night game. He had this game in him against the Chiefs the first time. There's a lot of benefits bestowed upon a team playing from ahead. And I think Allen, to a weird degree, the Bills are so good at pushing the envelope when they're ahead that we get this turbo Allen against bad teams that we're like, oh my gosh, he's like Mahomes. It's like, well, no, Mahomes is this way when they're behind by 9. They're this way when, the Chiefs didn't score a point in the first quarter today, and they were slow to go again. And it's just eventually that first drive that they went and scored a touchdown, I was kind of nervous the whole time. I'm like, man, they're crossing the street a lot to get to the end zone here. Why don't you just throw it in from 30 or something? And I think the one answer that we had to the question tonight was, Allen wasn't able to string together enough good plays in a row, and the Chiefs were forcing him to, and Mahomes was, and the Bills in many ways were forcing him to. Now they had big plays too, but that was really the difference. Is that Allen? I think we got drunk with him while he was playing from ahead in a lot of games prior to this one.
Yeah, and I also don't think we should be. This is an incredible season for the Bills. To make it to the AFC Championship game and to be just a 3.5 point underdog to the Kansas City Chiefs, Mahomes' injury aside, was a very successful season. The way that Josh Allen improved this year, no one would have predicted. Even Allen's biggest proponents would have not seen him being a top 5 quarterback this year, I don't think. And he was. And he did play well in the Indy game. The Baltimore game, they won 17-3, but that was really about Baltimore's inefficiency, that he overthrew Diggs, a little bit of weather going on there. And in this game to me summed up the difference between a guy that's been here before and is one of the greatest players on the planet and a guy who just hasn't been here yet. Mahomes managed that game so well. There was creativity in their game plan. He took advantage of it. They have better weapons than the Bills do, took advantage of it. And ultimately that...
And better coaching, which ended up bubbling to the top. With McDermott,
that surprised
field goal
me
kicking.
a ton.
Yeah, man. I mean, here's the thing. We talked about this on the live show. Both of us, I think all 4 of us said, and I can't remember who took, I think Sam took the Bills. And I said, look, you have to grade out the players on this game. And again, we took the Bills early in the week, so I want to sort of mea culpa here. Okay. We took the Bills early because there was still a non-trivial chance that Mahomes was not going to play. And there was also the futures deal, all that kind of stuff. But by the time it got to today, when it was clear Mahomes was going to play, it was clear Fenton, Breeland, and they were going to play. I was almost said Edwards-Helaire, but what we said, Buffalo deserved to be there. There had to be a second best team in the AFC. But we allowed ourselves in many ways to ignore priors that matter and exist. Mm-hmm. And the Chiefs' prior matters and exists.
The difference in coaching was stark. The lack of creativity for the Buffalo Bills offense was astounding, especially given that they were an underdog on the road. There just wasn't – the Chiefs always have 4 or 5 plays where you go, holy shit, I've never seen that before. Or I've seen something kind of similar, but nothing quite like this. They pull them out at the right time. They're always big plays, and they always bring those to the table. And the Bills didn't have any of those. The Bills also were uncharacteristically conservative on fourth downs. It was like most field goals wins at one point. That's just not going to win you a game. Again, like they kicked that field goal going into the half, and it's like, what do you gain from that? What? So you can go in and be like, look, guys, moral victory at halftime. Yeah. Congratulations. I hope this really gets you excited for the second half where we're, guess what, going to need touchdowns to win the game. But you got a field goal. Well, 3/7 of the way there.
It was the same thing. So we were helping with one of the broadcasts, and the Packers kicked a field goal to go down 14-10 before the half, and the notion was, look, we get the ball to start the second half, yada yada yada. And that the terrible end of the half by the Packers notwithstanding, that would have been quite nice to have that 4 there, wouldn't it have been?
Yeah,
and how much
I was shocked by that decision. I thought
it was worth 4 or 5%.
Let's rank the coaching performances. Seren is going to be joining us and jumping in here momentarily. While we wait for him to show up on the screen, rank the coaching performances today.
Well, so here's the thing. It's Reed and then everybody else.
Okay.
But the second one, and I'll give this to him, Arians, the early down stuff still sucked. But I will say, he was aggressive at the end of the half.
That may have won them the game.
And that won them the game.
That won them the game. And LaFleur was...
He folded.
There's some people out there talking about the last field goal at the 8-yard line and that it actually gained them some win probability. That is not something that we saw. Seren, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yes, guys. How are you?
Very nice.
Mr. Petro, congratulations.
Yeah.
Same to you, Eric.
Oh God, is this? Am I in for one of these nights right here? Is this going to be a slob fest here? Is this what I'm in for?
There's nothing I like more than when I go on my old man walk and I'm listening to the PFF forecast and George starts to cry about the fact that Eric and I are breaking down what championship clubs look like. And, it just brings a smile to my face. Mile 2, mile 3, I'm grinding away, at about 6 miles an hour.
Yeah, so you go on some really long walks. You're like 2 hours in there.
I do. It's all I got, man. It's a pandemic. I don't know if you heard.
So, yes, congratulations are very much in order here. And I give you guys a little bit of a hard time. But it's, look, I have to keep myself entertained here while you guys are doing so well. The thing that stuck out to me, and the doctor over here was giving some prognoses for Patrick Mahomes' turf toe.
I've had it before. So hashtag I played the game. So I kind of knew that it wasn't going to be a big deal. But
as someone that's battled through turf toe before, it did not look like there was like he even had a stubbed toe, much less a turf toe. Do you have any insight, being a person on the inside of the Kansas City world, as to what in the ever-living hell they did for Mahomes and his toe?
I think little bit of insight.
Yes.
Mostly speculation, right? Just to be clear, I think
this is all true.
100%.
100%.
Painkillers are real, and I think that was part of the equation today. Once you know the injury and it's diagnosed, you can put the orthopedics you need in the shoe. That happened today as well. And we don't know the severity, right? A turf toe is not a turf toe, right? Everyone's got its own, I'm assuming, level of severity that comes with it. So, maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. I think certainly if you, for lack of a better term, shoot it up with painkillers, then you can get through it better. And I think that's a little bit of what we saw from Patrick Mahomes in this game. I mean, I don't think he was 100%, but I think, even with the insole in his shoe that doesn't allow the foot to bend where the toe is a problem, he's still probably at 90%, and he still has the escapability he needs.
The Chiefs also covered.
Yeah, Seren, by the way, you and I finally get our team through the window here. Interestingly, though, right? Like this, it sort of almost played out, at the end the way it had. If you bet like Chiefs second half, which is an absolute steal, I think it was like plus a half a point or something. But they almost kind of like just let the other team back in it, which is sort of like not let them back in it, but let them score some points at the end because that's how their defense is. But like, make no mistake, if this game would have ended, what was it, 38-31, like, make no mistake, like, this is this was much like the other good teams they've beaten this year. They were in control basically from the second quarter on in this game. Seren, we talked about this on your show. The defense, like, I know you had Adam Teicher on, and he was like, very, show me type of, on Thursday or Friday. Have you seen a Chiefs defense that has sort of like lived up or surpassed expectations better than this one has for a long time?
I think, and Adam's great, right? He's covered the Chiefs since 1994, works for ESPN. And I get his point in the sense that, we don't want to see these games where you give the ball, the offense has to go get 2 first downs to get into victory formation, right? You want to end it by taking the ball away and not being within 1 score. And I understand that mindset, but it is still the NFL. And I do think what has been real is this team will be measured by the postseason, not by the regular season. And I think there was a level of they would get to a score in regular season games and say, okay, we've got this one in the bag, and they were on to the next week. And the other teams would keep fighting, to their credit. The Chiefs would have to turn it back on, usually on the offensive side of the ball. They'd convert a couple of first downs, and they'd get out with a win. Listen, no adage has ever been truer, in my opinion, than good teams find a way to win close games, right? How many coaches have you heard that are coaching a 6-10 team talking about, whoa, we had 5 games that, we were within 1 score. Yeah, well, good for you. You couldn't get the scores that matter, and the Chiefs do that. You couldn't get the stops that matter, and the Chiefs do that. I believe that this defense is every bit as good. The big conversation in Kansas City has been, well, they're definitely good, but they're closer to 18 than 19. The defense really is having, problems stopping people. They give up 14 to the Atlanta Falcons. They give up 17 to the Cleveland Browns. I believe it would have been like 39-20, 39-17 against the Cleveland Browns if Patrick Mahomes didn't go down. And I think that's the game you saw here, right? And, oh, by the way, with a converted onside kick. And what nobody ever talks about when you're trying to find out, when the narrative is, oh, why is this team winning, or how do we beat up on the championship caliber team, you go back and find all the little things that if they'd gone their way, the Chiefs would have lost. But let's back up. The Kansas City Chiefs muffed a punt. That's 6 points that were just given to the Buffalo Bills. That
was a violent muff.
Juan Thornhill dropped an interception. Charvarius Ward dropped an interception. Tyreek Hill dropped what was going to be at least a 30-yard completion, on the first drive that they went 3 and out on the 3rd and short. He dropped it. Like, all those are there, and we just say, well, we brush those away for the team that wins, but then we find all the little things that might have helped the team that didn't win, and we only factor that in. This game was the exact score that it should have been between these two teams. There were missed opportunities on both sides, and there were big injuries on the Chiefs side. And I think, reality is we're seeing the Chiefs play the game that they're here to play. That's playoff football games, and they got the job done. And they got it done in a big way.
Well, and you talk about, because I think George and I would push back on the idea about good teams winning close games, in the sense that I don't know if that holds up statistically over time. But I will say I might reserve a special place for, because I think when you look at Green Bay, for example, George, they're a good team, right? Mm-hmm. But LaFleur kind of showed his ass in this game as far as 4th downs, as far as early down stuff, all that kind of stuff. Like, Andy Reid, and Belichick was this way for the last 20 years or whatever. He's had his moments. But it might be true about those coach-quarterback combinations that legitimately squeeze every last piece of juice out of the orange, right? Like,
you guys have talked about the greatness of the Chiefs' defense. Now we're squeezing juice out of oranges. No, here's what I think you guys are getting at, is that great teams will come back from deficits and win games. Yeah. And that is what the Chiefs continually do. There are a lot of very good teams that do not do that. And they'll win close games that they're ahead in and end up getting close.
Or they'll luck into a game when the other team completely craps themselves, right? But almost every team in the NFL leaves edges all over the field, every freaking game. And, we are starting to wonder out loud whether the Bills were one of these teams that didn't. right? If they were one of these teams that threw as much as we want teams to throw, if their defense invited the run as much as and they cover okay.
Are they going to go for fourth downs as much as they should?
And what we saw tonight is when you have to stare, the one of the best teams in football, if not the best team in football, straight in the face, you clam up a little bit.
Yeah, when you have to look the best quarterback right in the toe.
Yeah.
Sometimes you come out on the wrong side. Seren, are you? We had Trevor Sickma, who's a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan, on before you, and he gave out some game balls. I want you to give out some game balls to the Chiefs players. I'm assuming that at least two are reserved for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the engine that made this team go this year, and Frank Clark. Am I right?
George, the only thing that I'm more impressed by your ability to not let your original preseason narrative go about drafting a running back in the first round and then the trade for Frank Clark, of which I'm very much on your side on the Frank Clark move, but he's here now, and so he's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey, nobody beats a dead horse like George Chahrouri.
Nope.
Let's be honest. Like, nobody can go to that like you can. The only thing more impressive than your ability to go back to that is your ability to find a shirt that is, while not obsessively tight, is tight enough to kind of show that bicep vein you worked so hard on, just to be subtle and be like, yeah, I work out a lot. Right. And so I do want to compliment you on that. I don't want to let that go.
Thank you.
Because the bicep vein is very important. If you can achieve it, you want to show it off even in winter when you got to wear a long sleeve.
Just be happy that's the vein I'm choosing to show.
This is the first time in the history of the show that George's attire has been made fun of before mine has. My attire is usually minus 200.
My attire, that was not being made fun of. That was a compliment.
Oh, gotcha.
I don't know if you're
sure.
You may not be aware.
Sure.
Not having the bicep, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No, give out some game balls to the players though that from this game.
Is it boring to go Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelsey? I mean, the money guys, to your point, you're right. Frank Clark, first and third round pick and a $100 million contract, has not lived up to it and did not live up to it in this game. He got one sack. Great. They threw all night. You could back ass into one, right? I probably could have gotten a half sack in this game somewhere along the way. So that's not where it goes. But, I know that's kind of boring, but let's first and foremost say that those stars that the Chiefs paid delivered. So if you pay 5 stars and 4 of them kick ass, then you're a good organization.
Matthew being one of those stars that they paid, who's an awesome player. Chris Jones as well. I want to say John Feliciano. He basically John Randall the shit out of him tonight, right?
He's gonna need therapy.
Yeah,
after this game. I almost felt bad for Feliciano, to be honest with you. Let me actually, because I don't think it's boring, but I want to go another layer deeper on Kelsey and Hill.
Wait a minute, before you do, can I give the game ball to Steve Spagnuolo?
Ooh.
He deserves it.
I think Spags, I think he's 61 or 2, and nobody talks about him as being a head coach, which is fantastic as a Chiefs fan, that he's going to be there. But his game plan has been fantastic. He's got a secondary after Matthew that are guys, and we've talked about this before, right? Charvarius Ward traded for an offensive lineman you were going to cut. Rashad Fenton, a 6th or 7th round pick. L'Jarius Sneed, a 4th round draft pick. Bashad Breeland, a couple of $1 million. A 2nd round pick was used on Thornhill, but they got a secondary that's not the massive investment. You guys always talk about coverage, and I agree with you. And I think tonight's story was coverage, right? That's what got it done for the Kansas City Chiefs, but it wasn't coverage based upon massive investments. Tyrann Mathieu was a big investment, but the rest, give some credit to Steve Spagnuolo and Brett Veach, the personnel, the general manager of this team, because they built a great secondary without a ton of resources.
That's a great point. Kelsey and Hill, the best receiving duo in the NFL.
History?
Your words, not mine.
No, I didn't know if that's where you're going.
No,
I didn't know if you forgot a word.
I mean, that's a great would you say they're definitively the best duo in the NFL today? And then, where are you going from a history perspective? Because they're freaking amazing.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're the first tandem to go for 100 yards receiving in back-to-back playoff games, right? That's never been done. You think about, Rice and Taylor. You think about Kellen Winslow and Johnny Jefferson. If you want to go way back, they're out there. I mean, like, they're in that discussion. They're still writing their story. So at the end of the day, when their careers are over, we'll be able to figure out where it is. But can you remember the combination of move the chains and strike fear into the heart and make big plays? That was the 1-2 punch that these two are. I mean, that they're the guys you got to stop, yet they always seem to be open. And credit Andy Reid, credit Eric Bieniemy, credit Patrick Mahomes, but credit those two guys first and foremost. They're the two guys you got to stop, yet they're always open.
Well, and their ability to get separation, to your point, Seren, covers such a – so we were watching the game in here, and one of our colleagues, Austin Gale, I turned around, there was the one where Mahomes, did the pump fake on Milano, and Milano didn't bite at all and started to swing him to the ground, and he threw the ball to Kelsey. One of the things that was interesting about that play was that no one was within 5 yards of Kelsey. So Mahomes could have literally thrown it on any sort of string to Kelsey, and it's probably a completion. And we talk about Mahomes as how brilliant he is, but a lot of these plays, the margin for error for him is immense because Hill, Kelsey, and now when you look at guys like Pringle, Hardman and Watkins when he plays, their scheme plus their abilities make them open. It's not to say that Mahomes isn't accurate. He is, but he doesn't have to I'm thinking of Rodgers throwing the ball to the correct shoulder of Nelson every single time 5 years ago. Mahomes doesn't need that, and that covers the fact, and they're going to have this on the Super Bowl, that both your tackles are out or your interior offensive line isn't particularly good. Having receivers where you don't have to be perfect in ball placement as a quarterback makes the life of the quarterback and the life of the offensive line so much easier. And those guys, I mean, no one in the league can cover Kelsey.
So, yeah, in terms of duos, who are you putting them in a category with? Best in the NFL right now.
Yes.
Agreed.
All time, they are the best wide receiver tight end combo. Because you go through the list of tight ends of all time, and Tony Gonzalez, as Seren knows, never had. I mean, they had Sammy Parker on the Chiefs at the time when Eddie Kennison and stuff like that. And in Atlanta you had White and Julio, but Gonzalez wasn't a brilliant tight end back then or at that point. But Kelsey's legitimately of a top 5 tight end of all time in my opinion now. And there was never a wide receiver in New England that made the conversation similar with Gronk. So duos, I mean, Carter Moss.
Carter Moss, and then who was Sharp? Who was the top wide out with Shannon Sharp?
With Sterling, you mean?
No.
Shannon Sharp
with the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, even then you're talking about
Smith
Anthony Miller and Rod Smith and Ed McCaffrey. Yeah, I mean those were good. Rod Smith's legit, but
but this is better.
Yep, I'd agree.
Yeah,
100% agree. Okay, let's get into this this matchup with the Bucs here. You guys already played. The game was over. This is week 12. The game was over at halftime in Tampa Bay. I believe Kansas City was a 3-point favorite actually in that game, right?
3.5 at close.
Okay.
If you got it early, it was 3.
End up winning by 3. So it was another one of the games they didn't cover, Seren. But 400.
So it was a bad game, by the way. They didn't cover.
400 passing yards for Patrick Mahomes in the first half, and so it was a game that it was a close game that the Chiefs won, but not one that really ever felt that close. How much from that game are you taking away, and what are some of the are there things that you think are going to ultimately help the Chiefs, or do you think that the Bucs are learning from some of those pieces?
I think, listen, Tom Brady threw 3 picks today. Throw 3 INTs against the Chiefs, and that's not a winning. That's not going to. You're not going to win because the Chiefs will make you pay where the Packers didn't, and I think that was surprising today. That the Packers weren't able to capitalize more on the mistakes that were made.
Let me just say real quick. They didn't get a first down after consecutive picks from Brady. Incredible. Continue, Seren.
Yeah, and not to analyze the other game that I'm not here to analyze, but can we take some shine off LaFleur? Right? Or either the shine comes off Rodgers or LaFleur, because when your defense keeps giving you the ball back, when the offense is the money side of the ball, you have to deliver the goods, and they didn't do it. And I just don't think that'll happen in a Kansas City game. Listen, that game, the Chiefs did not cover because of 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns by the Bucs. And credit Tom Brady, right? He can do that. And they can do that. And they have weapons and they have firepower. But what we've seen, that the Chiefs just are not going to be bad for 4 quarters. They're not going to be bad for 3, no more than 2. Right? Tom Brady led 17-0 when he walked off the field at halftime of the 2018 AFC Championship game in Kansas City. At the end of 30 more minutes, it was 31-0. Right? The Chiefs had outscored them 31-14. And that was when Mahomes was in his first year and no playoff experience, really. They're going to get going at some point. So the key has been, and the Raiders were the one team that were able to do it, to score, get up and go, which the Bills did, but then keep going and keep scoring. And I don't know that Tom Brady's arm has that left in him. I think Tom Brady is much more Alex Smith when running Andy Reid's offense, and that is a game manager, than he is a guy that's going to be a game winner. And because I think you saw him try to ice the game, and he couldn't do it in this situation. So, I think the spread, listen, drunk on success right now, right? And watching my team win, but I'm stunned that the line is so low. In fact, it scares me that the line is as low as it is, because I don't think Vegas and odds makers are morons. And so I don't know if it's the general public and Tom Brady's mystique and the fact that Brady won that AFC Championship game that they think all this money is going to come in on Tom Brady. But I think the number's low. I think these two teams played, and the difference between these two teams is double digits. And I think when the game was actually being contested, for the most part, the Chiefs were by far the superior team. And I would expect that to be the case here. I think the tackle situation for the Chiefs is real. And the question is, and that's for you analytic guys, you big math brains, to figure out how much does losing Eric Fisher mean, because that is a significant injury.
What would you make the spread then, if you were the bookmaker?
You know what? Honestly, this feels to me like back in the day where the NFC was rolling the AFC. And I think this is a team, I think the Chiefs are the superior team. If Eric Fisher were playing, I would probably put it out at 9.5.
Wow.
Eric Fisher's not playing, so I think this thing should be in the 5, 5.5, 6, right? You should be looking for tease players to get on the other side of it. I think it should be right around that teaser line at 6. To try to get the action going and try to get, you got multiple bets. We know the Super Bowl, if you want to do any kind of parlays and all the exotic bets that are going to be out there, you got to get it around one of those numbers. And so that to me is where this one should be, is probably Chiefs 5.5, 6, 6.5, not 7, right? But I think it should be more than the 3. And again, I always check myself when it's what I think, and I listen to you guys on the forecast all the time when you guys talk about the line that you think it's going to be. And so I'm thinking this game should be that they were going to be all over the Chiefs. When it's not, I'm scratching my head saying, okay, what am I missing here?
Yeah. We've written about extensively why it's good to bet now. I mean, it was like 69% of games that you bet now end up moving in the right direction. Chiefs so you're seeing this painted either as -3, -120, or -3.5, +100. Chiefs are at -165 on the money line here. Total 56.5. Not the highest total we've seen. Brady versus Matt Ryan in 2016, that season was the highest.
I've already bet the over multiple times.
I agree with you, Seren, in the sense, and again, I'm not trying to just be a homer here, but we were talking about this with Green Bay. And again, I want your opinion on this, Seren, because I thought that the line was too low this week for Green Bay, and I thought you were paying a Tom Brady tax to bet the Bucs. And the markets took them from 4 to 3.5 to 3 on close. And I think if you play that Green Bay Tampa Bay game a million times, Green Bay covers 3 enough times to make it a profitable bet. And you do the same thing with the New Orleans game 2 weeks ago, and you get the same thing. The last time that they played an offense that I thought it had any sort of creativity was Washington in the first round of the playoffs, and they let Taylor Heineke move the ball up and down the field on them. I'm not saying this Bucs team's overrated or they're lucky to be here, but are we drunk on the great story that Tampa is? Bruce Arians being an affable guy, a guy everybody likes. Leftwich, Bowles, good stories at the coordinator spots, and obviously the
Tom Brady story,
which Tom Brady,
the greatest redemption / revenge story out there.
Playing the Super Bowl at home, even though the fan situation is probably not going to be all that advantageous to Tampa. I agree with you, Seren. I think we're paying a Tampa Bay tax. And the fact that they're hanging it out there at 3.5, it's very similar. We talked about this in a chat room today, George, when we were talking about Buffalo versus Kansas City. I said, well, they opened Buffalo -1.5. They didn't want to get it past 3 because they didn't want to get middled, And even though I think if you were to just say, if Mahomes didn't get hurt against Cleveland, and you think to yourself, okay, they were -5.5 in Buffalo, and then did they lose 5 points of power ranking value over the course of the season from week 6 till now, based upon what, right? This one you're getting anchoring too. You're getting anchoring by the emotion and the fun that was Tampa Bay coming out of Green Bay with a win today. I think that's my opinion.
Well, and there's narratives too, right? I mean, that people want to pay to bet on those narratives.
Go ahead, Seren.
Yeah, I know. I think your point's a good one because, I think no one saying, hey, I like the defending champ and number 1 seed to win. Boring, right? All
True.
the analysts that are out there are looking to be the guy to discover, the new vaccine, the new math code, whatever it is, right? Like just like going with the, for lack of a better term, the chalk is boring, right? You're supposed to be the guy that finds, hey, I found the new variance that this is really who's the better one. And reality is Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback. Andy Reid may very well be the best coach. He's certainly the best coach in this matchup. He was certainly the best coach in the matchup today against the Bills.
Yep.
And like those seem too easy to just go, I want to hang my hat on that. Everybody wants to find the new sexy thing that no one else is talking about. And reality is sometimes, Nick Saban's approach, bigger people beat littler people. Right? He will literally dumb it down on some of their recruiting to that. Big guys beat little guys, right? Well, big brains beat little brains. Like big time quarterbacks beat little time quarterbacks. And Tom Brady is at this point in his career, the greatest game manager around. But like you saw today with the picks, like the arm's not there. He's not going to rifle it down the field. And what happens when he gets behind and the other team is playing aggressively? Can he get it done? I say no. I think the Chiefs have been waiting for the postseason, right? I think they matured like to become the Patriots on their 5th or 6th Super Bowl. Like everyone who comes behind those that break down the norms, make it that much faster in the evolution, right? The first guy who tears down the wall, it seems like, oh my God, the 4-minute mile, your lungs will explode. And then after the guy runs the 4-minute mile, everybody runs a sub 4-minute mile. And I think that's what you're seeing is that the Chiefs are that team, and they know when to flip the switch and say, okay, now we got to go. And then when the game is over, turn it off. And I think the Chiefs are the team that kicks everybody's ass for 3 quarters. And then getting all excited and putting all your weight as far as just picking outcomes, right? Not necessarily wagers, but picking outcomes, putting all your weight into 4th quarter, oh, by the way, scores is a fool's errand. And most of the Chiefs' close games are 4th quarter, oh, by the way, scores.
Yeah, and you're sort of talking about that famous discussion of like, was it Kobayashi in the hot dog eating contest when like he didn't like know what the records were, and then he beat the hot dog eating records by like 20. Yeah, and he's like, oh wait, the Chiefs to some degree, which is so cool. 2017, our first year of watching and betting on football together, George. The Chiefs draft Patrick Mahomes, and they build an offense around him. And then they run it with Alex Smith for a year, and Alex Smith wins the passing title. And it's sort of one of those where they sort of said, okay, our team for the Andy Reid era, 2013 to 2016, was defined by our limitations. Let's rewrite everything and see if we can do things better. And I think that like, and that was what, Teicher was on your show, and he was saying, like, you don't want to have to depend on this offense to be perfect at the end. It's like, well, I mean, I'd rather my offense be perfect at the end than my defense be perfect at the end. Like that's such a better bet, right?
Yeah.
And that's what they put themselves in position to do.
I think it's losing sight of the fact that like what the competition is, right? That like perfection, I've called it, Chiefs fans are having to learn what it means to be the heavy, right? Like Chiefs fans root for their team like they're the damsel in distress, like sitting out there waiting for someone to come save the day. Oh my God, we made a mistake. All is lost. Who's going to come save us? And in reality, what the Kansas City Chiefs are, they wear a black hat. They walk out to the middle of the street. They put their 6-gun in their holster and they say, bring it on. Who's got it? I'm the fastest gun in the West. Let's dance. Right. And like the fans aren't ready for that yet. Pat fans know what that feeling is. But it's like, I don't care who it is. Bring it on. Let's go. Because defensively, they've got playmakers, enough playmakers, and they've got a great defensive coordinator. Offensively, Andy Reid's as good as it gets, one of the best of all time, maybe the best. They got a quarterback who's as good as it gets, the best now, maybe one of the best of all time. There is nothing to fear. The bottom line is every game, the Chiefs have it from a game planning standpoint on the defensive side. They have it from a game planning standpoint on the offensive side. Not to say that they can't have a bad day, because Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid will come to the podium. And I love it when they do. And they go, yeah, they got us. Right? That's Andy Reid's way of tipping his cap to the opposition. But I'm going to tell you something. It doesn't happen very often. And Steve Spagnuolo, I remember in the Packer game last year, said, yeah, I really made a mistake with our linebackers. I made a switch in the second half that really cost us, but we'll learn from it. We'll be better. He said this week, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this, but we'll be ready for it. And I even said today in our pregame show, that's a confident guy, right? He seems to feel like, hey, whatever they're going to bring, we're going to do it. So when you have coaching staffs that are going to have the game plan, and then you have particularly the quarterback, by far the most important part, that can execute it and then can improvise and get it done, like, I think analyzing the Chiefs and their weakness is a fool's errand. I think all of the analysis needs to be on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and can they get, because the Chiefs' worst game, because they did not play a perfect game day. We mentioned drop ball, dropped interception, all these things that happened along the way, yet they still won, and they won by a couple of scores. All analysis is how perfect can the Bucs play and how high is their ceiling? How much beyond the Chiefs' floor can the Bucs' ceiling get? Because the ultimate team in the NFL today is the Kansas City Chiefs, period, end of discussion. How low will they play? How high can the Bucs play? That's the real discussion about this game.
Well, it seems like we know which side you would bet on. I have a question here to kind of get us thinking about potentially what a great game in the Super Bowl this will be. So you guys are both Chiefs fans. Would you rather be in a situation where you have the ball with Mahomes needing a touchdown, okay, or in a situation where Brady has the ball and only needs a field goal?
Mahomes.
Seren?
Yeah. So I believe when you guys, when you come on my show, we've talked about this a lot. I mean, the Chiefs are almost most dangerous when they're down, right? Like a little bit of a wounded animal, and they incorporate everything they can, which includes fourth down. And I don't know that Patrick Mahomes, barring a 15-yard personal foul penalty that makes it 3rd and 25, I don't know that Patrick Mahomes can be stopped from getting 10 yards in 4 plays ever, right? Or almost ever, right? Enough times, and he has the will to win. And I think that there's never been, LeBron James is his own thing. And maybe one day when it's all said and done, we'll say he's better than Michael Jordan. But at least as far as the pure will to win and inability to accept losing, I think Patrick Mahomes is the closest thing to Michael Jordan that we've seen in a long time. And he does seem to have the ability to raise his game. And he's got playmakers around him and a coaching staff that does, creates brilliant plays. Because, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, when the cap is caught up to him and guys have moved on or been hurt or retired or whatever, we're going to see a new evolution. Everyone, I'm sure, thought Russell Wilson was going to win 6 Super Bowls in Seattle, right? Those days still lie ahead for the Kansas City Chiefs. But right now, in this circumstance, with what they have and his will to win, his study, his knowledge, his accuracy, it's beyond just, arm talent. He's not Brett Favre. I think that he cannot be stopped. He's the closest thing to not – everyone can be stopped. He's the closest thing to not being able to be stopped. So I agree. I think Eric's right. I mean, if you're going to give Mahomes all 4 downs, then I think he's going to get it done. But I will say this: it's a closer decision. Had you made it 7-7 each way, like the Bucs got to go get 7, I might take the defense, because I think the Chiefs defense is better than people think.
Yep.
Because I think they play based upon the offense that they have. And so it was 7-7. I actually almost might take the defense. but there's no reason to ever bet against Patrick Mahomes in almost any scenario that requires him to just get one score.
Yeah, and part of it's a Tom Brady question, right? Because I think if you said, hey, who would you rather have for one game-winning drive 4 years ago, the answer is Tom Brady, right? And right now the answer is Patrick Mahomes. Yep. But how close is Tom Brady, right? And it's to your point, Seren. It's not about are the Bucs a better team. They're not. It's not about is Brady a better quarterback. He's not. But how close can he get at his ceiling to whatever the Chiefs' floor is?
But Seren, 2 years ago, to this day, right? I mean, in football history, I mean, we're sitting here, and the Chiefs, still hadn't won a Super Bowl in 49 years, and they had Brady, who I think Brady now, given what he has in Tampa versus what he had sort of as a shell of themselves in New England in his penultimate year there, all we needed as Chiefs fans, they were up by 4.
Yeah,
all we needed as Chiefs fans was a stop.
One stop.
And I think to your point, Seren, the defense has come such a ways in, and look, and we knew it. Like when Sutton first took that DC job, they needed to not only be great on defense, they needed to score on defense, they needed to flip field position on defense, and with that comes the risk. And Tampa does that, by the way, which is going to be an interesting discussion next 2 weeks. But now the Chiefs' defense is they play within themselves to a certain degree, and we talked about this on your show too. It's like they don't get fancy. Like they do what they need to do, and Brady, I agree. If it was 7-7, just given how base rates work and all that stuff, I would trust the Chiefs defense. To at least hold up, a little bit.
There's a little bit of Tom Brady shade that's going on. Seren, it's really coming strong from you over there in Kansas City, which it doesn't surprise me. Okay, you're closer there. You watch the game outside. You were one with the elements.
3 big drives and 3 picks in a row. And
but not all of the picks were totally his fault. A couple bad throws, but he also made some incredible throws down the field. And I think his arm. You said you gave him way too much Alex Smith-ness to him. Well, which, hopefully he doesn't listen to this. You don't fire him up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's what we want. So, Seren, can I ask you one last question about sort of what this means in the history of the this season is probably going to be the weirdest of the Mahomes-Reed era in the sense that every year after this, you're talking about the cap, you're talking about the draft, you're talking about there's going to be reasons for the Kansas City Chiefs to be motivated over the next decade, whether they're trying to maneuver money-wise or they're trying to replace Kelsey or replace Tyreek Hill, build a defense back. This one was the weirdest season, right? Because they basically brought back everybody, and the hardest part of the season was making sure that Mahomes and Reed got to the stadium every week, and there was the motivation, right? And they didn't have a slip-up at the wrong time. And, with an exception being the Raiders game, like this has been that has worked out as planned so far. And there's almost no chance that they won't be motivated for the game in 2 weeks. So is this going to go down as sort of one of the weirder seasons, weirdly unique seasons, I think, in the franchise?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I think, for the entire NFL, for the entire sports world, I think it remains to be seen. And maybe, I think some great books will probably be written about, did the pandemic help or hurt certain teams, right? Is the dedication and obsession, the fact that Andy Reid sleeps in his office 3 or 4 nights a week probably helps him not get COVID, right? Patrick Mahomes being a sicko, junkie football freak, he's dedicated to it. And it doesn't matter what's going on. Like, we've seen the kid will knock back a beer, he'll shotgun a beer like it's nobody's business. We've seen that at the parade and at hockey games. He likes to have fun like all young kids should, but he's clearly dedicated to the game. I do think that's one thing that should be celebrated is all the principal characters of the Kansas City Chiefs have not had a problem with COVID. So in some ways you could say, well, yeah, they're all into it, so it's easier for them. Or do you say, hey, how about them? They were the most disciplined team out there. So it is a unique season all around because of that. And I do think that one thing that should be celebrated, listen, Tom Brady won his first Super Bowl. The next year they went 9-7 and missed the playoffs, right? Then they won back-to-back. And it's one thing to win when you got the bullseye on your back. It's another thing to win when you got the bullseye on your back. And it's your first time having won it. Like, I do think that this team has gone along and learned on the fly, because I've never covered a team that's won a championship before or won a Super Bowl before, and had them have the bullseye on their back. And I think that's real. I think it is a real thing. It's a real thing for the first time to have the shortest offseason that you've had. All those things. And this team has handled it to the point of winning 14 regular season games, handled the pandemic, which I think has worn everybody down. I think this is a tired team. I think they're all tired. I think the pandemic has worn everybody down. But to their credit, I think this is Andy Reid's guidance and Patrick Mahomes' leadership, they have remained focused during a year that is like no other for them. They've never been defending champions before. They've done all that. They've never handled a pandemic before. They've done all that, and here they sit one game away from winning a championship. I think it's an incredible accomplishment what this team has done just to be standing here. And I know, like, right now we look back and be like, yeah, of course, the Chiefs. Everybody picked the Chiefs. Still, watching it week by week by week by week and answering the bell almost every single week, every week but the Raider game, it's been a very impressive performance from this organization top to bottom.
No, let's not everyone picked the Chiefs. There were many fools out there who loved the Steelers just a few short months ago.
To Soren's point, Tampa is also one of the teams that handled COVID extremely well as well.
Agreed.
So I agree with you that both teams that sort of either by luck or by, I think, process that have sort of stayed the course, and not dealt with, mass, sort of players being on the list or whatever, I think it's a testament, and I think it's no mistake that these two teams are here.
Well, both other Final Four teams did as well, right?
Yeah. So good on them.
Soren, it is always a pleasure. I can tell that you're already hyped up for this game. We will stay in touch. Are you going to try and make the trip to Tampa? Are you celebrating in the same spot that you won the AFC Championship game in? What's your plan here?
No, I'll be, I got buddies that we used to go to the games together when I had tickets. I finally get the tickets because I have all girls in my house and they had no interest in going to the games. So we started watching at my house like 2 years ago. I gave up my tickets the first time after like 30 years. And we watched at my house this year. We hung a TV outside. We watched every single game outside. The last 4 games have been like 30-something degrees.
Yeah, wow.
And we have been outside, so we will be outside for the Super Bowl, watching the game as we have been every week. Everybody's sitting in their same chairs, same blankets on every chair, and we will order the same Joe's Kansas City barbecue that we have had every game as our pregame meal. My daughter will make her chocolate chip cookies. Game time will be the same that has been all the way.
Eric's not making me any chocolate chip cookies, but we'll try and celebrate the game nonetheless, the same way that you will. Soren Petro, Sports Radio 810 in Kansas City. If you are listening to anyone talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, this is the guy to listen to. We appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks Soren.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Love you, boys.
You guys are just, the cloud nine-ness of the whole thing was so much for me to take in. Let's talk a little bit about betting on this game, because Soren, were you a little surprised at how much he likes the Chiefs?
I think
what would you? Because didn't we guess the lines here on these games, and I thought we were pretty much in the 3 range, right?
Well, yeah. I don't know because it was weird, right? Because we didn't know if we thought that Tampa Bay would have to play an uber impressive game to beat Green Bay. Mm-hmm. And while I think that they're more impressive maybe than I just gave them credit for, or lack of credit for, they probably weren't as competitive necessarily. If they play that kind of game against Kansas City, it's curtains for them. They throw 3 interceptions. And the Chiefs were more impressive in the game against Buffalo than I think many people. Obviously, they won by 14 in a game that were line -3. So I wouldn't say 9.5, but I can. I get what he's saying in the sense that and I'm trying to remember these games. I don't have the spreads off of the top of my head, but there were these games historically where you would puff these games up, right, and say, oh, this is super competitive, and let's hang a 3 here and get money on both sides and all that kind of stuff. When the true number might be a lot bigger. Right. And because in the Super Bowl, the public has an actual say over like what happens, that might be like the reason maybe this thing could be. I wouldn't say 9.5, but I would probably. I mean, 4.5 doesn't seem all that unreasonable to me.
No, 4.5 does not. I think you make a really good point, which is I am still not sold on Tampa Bay and the things that they have done to win these past 2 games being reproducible in a game against a much better team. The Chiefs are the best team in the NFL, and it's not by a hair, it's not by a little bit. The Chiefs have been demonstrably better than the rest of the league for the entirety of the season. And anyone that wanted to put the Steelers in there for a week or the Packers in there for a week or whatever the hell, wanted to get cute and try and get people to click on their bullshit crap can go where the sun does not shine, because you're delirious. You're out of your fucking mind. The Chiefs are like 4.5 points better than every other team. And so when you see a Bucs team that hasn't done anything to make you go, oh, wow, like things have changed, and they're winning because, like they've gotten some great play on defense, but they've capitalized on turnover opportunities. That's not going to happen all the time. Today on third down, Tom Brady was a madman. He averaged like 15 yards per attempt. His average to the target was 20 yards. On first and second down, the Tampa Bay Bucs were the least efficient team of all 4 teams today. So I can get on board with that. I don't think it's crazy to say that probably the right line here might be 6. And
okay, I mean, look, like, so right now, let's look at the way that the marketplace is. So on Pinnacle, Chiefs minus 3.5 is plus 112. On Bet Online, minus 3.5 is minus 105. I think that's the difference between a sharp book and a square book. We've already taken minus 3 at minus 120. It seems to be moving. So right now on Bet Chris, and I think this is what we probably want to make our official picks. So right now on Bet Chris, which is probably the sharpest book, Kansas City is minus 3, minus 115. I think that's the play you have to make. Total on the game 56, overs minus 110. 56.5 was what was being painted. 56, I think, is a bettable play towards the over.
I just bet the over twice during this podcast.
At 56 or 56.5?
56.
I mean, that's a really good. So for me, that's where I look. I'm going to say.
So I mean, I understand the 3, and I understand the 3.5, because the way that the Bucs have played has been impressive, and people overvalue the repeatability of 2 things. Third down. This is the whole Steelers thing. And I'm not comparing the Bucs and Steelers because Tom Brady is actually playing great football. But third down success is very hard to repeat, and turnovers and defensive success are also very hard to repeat. And what the Green Bay Packers trotted out onto the field today, and what Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers cooked up, was unimpressive. It was uninspiring. It lacked creativity. It lacked aggressiveness. They were outcoached by Bruce Arians and outplayed by Tom Brady, and that's not going to happen in this game. Andy Reid's going to be more creative. They're going to be better on first and second down, and Patrick Mahomes is going to outplay every other person on that field.
Yeah, so do we want to make it – I mean, we're going to write up about both anyway. I mean, Do we want to just say KC minus 3, minus 115, and then over 56? The over.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what some of the first quarter and first half.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like I think people are going to gravitate towards the Tampa defense, especially without Fisher. People might not have learned the lesson. I guess.
Let's talk about that though, because you're lacking both starting tackles. You're
not great on the interior anyway,
right? And we just heard Trey talk about it. JPP, Shaq Barrett, Vita Vea, they're really good. The Bucs can't blitz in this game. If they blitz, they're going to die. So it sets up for them to be able to do exactly that. What did the Chiefs do to combat that?
I mean, I think they do. So I tweeted this out just a second ago. Mahomes today had the lowest average depth of target of any player in the league this week. Brady's was 12.4. Mahomes is 5.8. Mahomes led everybody this week in yards per attempt. If you include no plays, there weren't that many plays that actually. And, Mahomes had one big time throw, no turnover worthy plays. Brady had 5 big time throws and one turnover worthy play. I think like 2 of the interceptions were tipped or whatever, and all these are subject to review. Is it going to be any different than that? Is it going to be any different than
maybe, but the game against Tampa Bay in week 12, Patrick Mahomes had 8 big-time throws.
Yeah.
It was his most ridiculous game, I think, that we've seen all year.
But don't you think that that's just a processing thing where it's like, I'm going to get rid of the football fast? Like, the Bills were saying, we want you in the pocket for a relatively long time. It was 2.5 in this game. Allen, by the way, 3.33 in the pocket, which is crazy to see.
But I guess my question is, does that not set up really well for what the Bucs are going to force you to do?
Because here's the issue. Like, the Chiefs' concepts were beating Buffalo when Buffalo was still, like, in many respects 2-1 with them. So they'd rush 4 and drop 7. Chiefs would put 4 to 5 in the pattern, and they were still getting wide open. If the Bucs rush 5 or 6 and drop 5 or 6 against, like the numbers game is even worse for them. And again, my question is, it's going to be this every week.
Who's going to cover Travis
Kelce? Because I look, like Devin White, I'm hard on Devin White, and I'm hard on Sean Murphy-Bunting. But the guys get beat all the time in coverage. And you're telling me that Hill, and our colleague Mike Renner wrote this, best slot receiver in football right now. Like, who's covering those 2 guys?
Yep. Great point.
And the offensive line just has to hold up enough. And Mahomes, like, Trey said this an hour ago. Like, the pressure doesn't matter on him, unless you sack him. And
well, that's kind of the point, though. It's like you're missing both your starting tackles, and your interior's not great.
So here's the thing. I'll say this. So is Green Bay, really, right? Ricky Wagner's not a starting tackle in the NFL, and neither is Billy Turner.
And they sacked Rodgers 5 times.
Yes, but the one thing that Rodgers doesn't have that Mahomes has is a second elite option.
That's some Bob Tunyon shade.
It's just like, because Adams is obviously brilliant.
Well, he doesn't have a second elite option or an elite coach.
Well, exactly.
Like LaFleur's system, and this is, I think, an interesting thing to talk about here. LaFleur's system this season was great. He and Rodgers were on the same page, and it worked, and it was masterful, and it was great. But there is a difference between the system working over and over again and being able to adjust from game to game and do what's necessary. And I think that is where Andy Reid, that's where Tom Brady has always been exceptional as well, is looking at what is before me right now. How do I win here? And
it's how he's do that. It's how he's like a god after the bye, and that's a deal. I mean, there, like, people ask, like, why Reid's the first and only coach to host 3 consecutive title games, and he's done it for 2 teams. Why is that the case? Well, because the guy doesn't lose with time off. Mm-hmm. Like, the only time he's lost with a bye with Kansas City, in the playoffs was the Steelers game when they had Smith at their quarterback. Like, with Mahomes, it's like it's turned into the Brady Patriots, where, I mean, not only did they have the bye every year from like 20 whatever till now, they won that first game. Like, it's just like the preparation is just so much more immense. And like, I probably overstated it when I said there's not a bigger mismatch coaching wise. I probably overestimated McDermott and Frazier and Dable, and I probably overestimated LaFleur and company on this, and Nathaniel Hackett and Pettin on the side of the Packers. But like, it's true this week, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought that what Arians did, and I don't know whose call, I think this was probably actually Brady, honestly, at the end of the half. That won the game for the Bucs, and it won the game for the Bucs in large part because the Packers were unwilling to make any of those moves, right? If you look at plays that required real balls to make in the Packers and Bucs game, all of them belonged to Arians and Brady. And everything that the Packers did was like, let's try and make sure we don't lose by more than 10 points.
Which I'll say this. The thing we give the Reid the most credit for is that, unlike some of these other really brilliant coaches like Shanahan and McVay and even LaFleur, Andy Reid almost thrives in giving his best player freedom and allowing and building a structure where that fish can swim, if you will. if Arians truly is allowing Brady, as he said this week, to coach more and to be more involved, I underestimated him because that's a really like a good thing.
And that gives them their only chance at winning this game.
Yeah, I agree.
Let me ask you this. Let's do the little counterfactual here. The Buccaneers are the Super Bowl champions. How does it happen?
Tom Brady played a near perfect game.
You are on such a high right now with the Chiefs.
Let me ask you
and
the
their
exact same
offense.
question then.
Yeah, I do think that it comes down to we haven't seen Mahomes make a bad play yet, and the recipe is here for the Bucs are going to gamble. We saw them gamble the first time they played the Chiefs. It did not work. They got their ass kicked. But they're the underdog. You got to gamble. So if you're the Buccaneers and you win this game, look, I think Tom Brady will be really good in this game.
I don't know. Is really good enough though? Because when you talk about gambling,
I'm not saying. I'm saying that to me he's going to be really good. Maybe he makes a mistake here or there, but he's going to be really good. But the Buccaneers to win this game, Mahomes has to make a mistake.
Yeah. But I'll say this about the Chiefs. Seren talked about it. They fumbled a punt at their own one.
But let's be real. The Bills fucking suck today.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So I agree. The Chiefs are very resilient. They do come back very, from deficits. But you're right. The other team opens the door for them. If the Bucs so I didn't even say that Mahomes had to make a mistake. I just said if Brady plays a near perfect game, the Chiefs could play a really good game and they could still win. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, whereas I think if Brady slips up at all, like kind of the Chiefs can kind of play their median game and win. I do think that there's a path where the Chiefs play a good game and the Bucs and don't make mistakes, and the Bucs just play a better game. Like that to me, that's the path for how the Bucs win the Super Bowl, and I think it's possible. I don't even think the Bucs need the Chiefs to implode to win this game.
Okay. Very interesting. Any other thoughts from today? Rodgers going nowhere. Thought that was a little overblown. A little bit of reaction to the moment.
Do you think Rodgers? So the only way Rodgers can leave is if he retires first, right?
Yeah.
And he does like a Favre.
Or try to force a trade.
Which he's like Favre. Can you imagine how much Rodgers rolled his eyes for 3 freaking years when Favre was doing all that stuff? There was no way Rodgers is a very self-aware person. There's no way Rodgers retires just to sort of force his way to the Jets Favre.
Not doing that.
And then eventually Minnesota
and Rodgers' self-awareness, he understands legacy too, I think, and what it means to be being a Green Bay Packer is different than being, as you pointed out, a New York Jet. There's just a fucking difference, you know?
And you don't want, because Packer fans turned on Favre and basically said, thanks for everything, Brent, after he left and stuff. And Rodgers certainly doesn't want that, having witnessed it firsthand. But here's the thing, though. If they don't get him help, could you see a situation where he knows it's his last year? And I'm not saying he throws a fit, but he doesn't play along as well as he played along this year.
If they don't bring in someone
they brought in Devin Funchess this year. That was the one wide receiver acquisition they made.
And I think Valdez-Scantling, made some nice catches today.
He's fine.
But
he's a 3.
You have Equiminius St. Brown over here just dropping stone cold passes in the end zone.
And Lazard didn't have a great game either.
No, and this is so funny to think about. Devontae Adams is the best receiver in the NFL, and right there with him is Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill on a play-for-play basis, you could make an argument, maybe even better, just given what he can do. But Tyreek Hill has Travis Kelsey alongside him.
Yeah.
Maybe the third best receiver bar position in the NFL. Devontae Adams' next best player over here is MVS.
Yeah, they ask a lot more of Adams than.
Think about that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's absurd. Go get 2-3 receivers. I don't know. Do what you got to do here, but you can't call yourself an offensive team and then just be that decrepit on offense.
And your defense.
The defense is
I'm sorry. When pressed, it's just a.
Will Fuller?
What?
They go sign Will Fuller?
The Packers?
Yeah.
Sure.
Kenny Galladay's out there.
Yeah.
We know they're
were
not
they
drafting
proven
anybody.
soft? Were they proven soft?
The Packers?
Yeah.
You know, I really thought that the Packers' biggest issue in this game was coaching. I got to be honest with you.
But like not trusting their play. Like I felt like there was just a go take it. Like the end of the half was just some boss shit, right? Like
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers came in there and just they just had more of everything.
Yeah, they had to have it. And what I like about that is because here's the thing, and when the coolest thing about this Super Bowl. Let me think back to this. Like, has Brady ever faced a team? No, it was the Giants. That's the last time. The last time they almost never face a team who has as much, like, you know how when you've accomplished things before, every subsequent small accomplishment is just smaller by comparison when you've achieved that first goal.
Right.
The cool thing about this game is I don't think either quarterback and by extension team is going to play scared because they're like, oh man, we don't want to lose our chance to win.
That's true.
Like they're gonna play to win the game in a way.
The only person who I'm worried about with that is Bruce Arians.
Exactly, but Bruce, I think Bruce. The part I underestimated about him is the early down runs, all this stuff. But when push comes to shove, he probably listens to Tom. And Tom, at this point, like, what's the freaking difference between Super Bowl 7 and 6?
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't care. He's just running the score at this
Here's
point.
Bruce Arians' recipe to success in the Super Bowl. Drink a couple of maybe 4-finger glasses of tequila before the game. Take the playbook. Give it to Tom Brady. Say, Tom, I'm excited to watch you play a hell of a football game here today.
And the same thing's true about the Chiefs, right? Reed's in the Hall of Fame already. Mahomes is already a Super Bowl champion. They're not going anywhere. Both teams, I think, are going to play. They're going to play to win the game, and they're not going to play not to lose something because they already have something that no one can take from them, which is important.
All right, that was our show. We thank all of you for hanging out with us that joined us live. And if you're listening to this podcast on a Monday morning, thank you as well. Our write-up on this game will be out. We'll obviously be back.
Get some coffee.
Yeah, we'll obviously be back on Wednesday. We'll talk, if there are props out, we'll talk props. We'll talk more about where this line is moved, any other bets that we like. So come hang out with us then. Until then, peace out. Love y'all.